lakh e-books and journals. In an increasingly interconnected world, SRM IST understands the importance of collaboration and has signed a number of MOUs with leading institutions and universities abroad for faculty, student exchange and research programs.
SRM is the first university who thought of semester abroad program. Students studying here, by the end of their third year, if they are eligible and they are particular to go in for higher education in the different top universities abroad, they can do so by choosing their subject and doing a part of their semester, and that semester credit will be taken into account for the pass in this university.
At SRM IST, boundaries of knowledge are constantly pushed, encouraging research in every discipline of study. Centers of excellence with well-funded R&D facilities, functioning in association with industry, the government and private agencies, make SRM IST a premier destination for researchers.
We have all the amenities that are required to pursue research, especially in my area of research, which is cancer biology. SRM also financially supports it in part of a stipend, and also supports our research by providing us fund every year to get chemicals, consumables and so on. I would say research in SRM is highly valued and merit is also valued at SRM.
Each and every SRM student is groomed to hit the ground running when starting a career. Last year, more than 1,300 companies visited SRM Institute of Science and Technology and made over 13,000 job offers, with the compensation package reaching as high as rupees 1 crore per annum. Besides placement, the direct...
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. In the event of an unlikely emergency, you will be intimated by the banquet manager handling this event. In case of an evacuation, the hotel security and the banquet staff will coordinate the entire movement. The ballroom is located on the ground level of the hotel. The room has 7 exits to ensure smooth evacuation, indicated by the exit sign. All 7 exits are from the main entrance of the hall, which leads you to corridor and to the safe assembly area through pre-function area. In case of an unlikely evacuation, the hotel staff will assist and guide you. Please do not panic, as the hotel staff is trained to handle such emergencies. Please crawl in smoke-logged areas for clearer air and more visibility. Manual call points have been installed across the hotel. In case of an emergency, please push the button and raise the alarm, which will send an alarm to the hotel crisis management team. All the banquet halls and banquet corridors have sprinklers, smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, and are equipped with a public address system. In case of any medical emergency, we have first aid available in the hotel with trained first aiders. For medical emergency, there is a doctor available on call. In case of any emergency outside the hotel, we will advise a lockdown. Our associates will assist in blocking the doors. Please do not open them until we say so. Kindly do not leave any personal or valuable items unattended during your conference. The designated smoking zone is situated just outside the main entrance near fountain. Kindly do not smoke in any other areas of the hotel. In case of any feedback related to safety or security, please reach out to our security officer at 8939856112. We thank you for your attention and wish you a pleasant event. Thank you.
When the dreams are high and they touch the sky, growing wings to fly. SRM, SRM, we build the future. SRM, SRM, we build the future. We are passionate. And we touch the sky, grow wings to fly. SRM, SRM, we build the future. We build the future.
SRM Institute of Science and Technology. Your future begins here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's try this again. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I hope all your mobile phones are on silent. Yes? Thank you very much. Thank you. On behalf of SRM Institute of Science and Technology and the Hindu, I am Ejada, and I am extending a very, very warm welcome to each one of you for the Future Career Conversations 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an evening which is dedicated to exploring the future reimagined. Discover, decide, and define your career. We are extremely delighted to each one of you because we have an incredible gathering of students, of PG aspirants, and working professionals with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, this initiative is designed to bridge the gap between the academic learning and the real-world
together
challenges.
Industry leaders, policy makers, innovators, all under one roof.
Today's conversations will help you gain clarity.
It will help you
gain clarity. It will help you gain directions and perspectives on the evolving world of careers. We will now move to our first session, which is titled Rejigged Employees. Well, to tell you a little more about this session, we all live in the world of buzzwords. If anybody can tell me what is the buzzword of late? Yes, thank you. AI. Next. Automation, digital transformation, and what else? DPDP. Well, but what does all these buzzwords mean for each one of you? Our first session, the Rejigged Employee, goes beyond the headlines, ladies and gentlemen. In this session, we are exploring how the very DNA of our career is changing, how the roles are shifting from those rigid titles to the fluid skill sets, and what it takes to stay indispensable in the workplace. To move into the depth of this session, I'd like to invite our panelists, and also it is an absolute privilege to introduce them as well. To begin with, our first panelist for the first session is Mr. Amardeep Devadason. Please give him a round of applause. He is a Senior Vice President and a Chief Growth Officer from the Creative and Digital Solutions at RRD and APAC, and also serves as a Global Head of Brand and Marketing, with extensive experience across industries and geographies. He is a certified leadership coach and a digital transformation expert. He is passionate about innovation, about storytelling, and shaping future-ready leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a bigger round of applause for our first panelist, Mr. Amardeep Devadason. Welcome to the panel, sir. We have with us Mr. Bijumon Jacob. He is the head of India operations at Ejada and leads HR for its global competency centers across the Middle East and India, bringing over 2 decades of leadership experience in scaling organizations and driving people strategy. He is a seasoned HR leader and an author. He is known for his thought leadership on career development, on organizational culture, and sustainable growth. Please give a round of applause for him. Welcome to the panel, sir. We have with us Mr. Abhishek Paul. There he is. He is the culture shepherd at Kissflow, where he shapes people practices and builds high-performance, purpose-driven work cultures for the evolving tech workforce. With nearly 2 decades of experience across enterprises and startups, he is passionate about applying system thinking to scale organizations' culture without losing its core essence. Welcome to the panel, sir. A big round of applause to him, please. We have with us Professor A. Vinay Kumar. He is the yes, please give a bigger round of applause as he walks to the stage. He is a name who I am sure all of you resonate with very, very easily. He is a Vice Chancellor at SRM Institute of Science and Technology, overseeing the faculties of Science and Humanities and Management, with over 25 years of academic and administrative experience. He was formerly a professor at IIM Lucknow and director at NMIMS Bengaluru. He is known for his contribution to curriculum innovation and institutional excellence. And these are our panelists. Welcome to the panel, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to call the captain of this session. To lead this discussion, we have Mr. Prince Frederick, a civic affair editor at The Hindu, joining in. Over to you.
Hello. Yep. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So first up, I need to tell you that I'm a bit nervous about the composition here. So it was quite a challenge getting all these gentlemen together. Their timings had to suit us to get them on the panel. And as you can see from whatever was read out about them and all that, it's an illustrious panel we have. I've also interacted with them in the past and all that, and I can say for a certainty that you will, and these are thought leaders, each in their own right. So now the challenge I have on my hands is greater. I need to get the best out of them in 1 hour. So I thought, rather than just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, just throwing questions at them, I'll just place certain questions on the table. So all of them could weigh in. So that's how it's going to be. Maybe there are some questions which will be directed, to one panelist. But otherwise, I think I want to make it chatty so that, each one weighs in. So first up, without losing much time, I would like to, I would want them to respond to this idea of a learning organization. And ever since, Frank Drucker popularized it, we've been talking a lot about it, but then an organization is not learning all the time. It's like El Dorado, the gold, city of gold and all that. It's always a city to be aspired for, right? City to be found. But then, the concept is really fascinating. So I just want each one of them to kind of let us know, like, what the ideal learning organization looks like. So I would want Amardeep to start.
Thanks, Prince. Learning organizations, you can look at it from two perspectives. Number one is how much of mandated training does an employee have to go through in a month, in a calendar year. Two is what is the culture of the organization and how does the culture of the organization develop this pull effect for learning. And why is that important in the current context when we're talking about skilling, we're talking about, I think Ekta said it very well, how do you make yourself indispensable to an organization, to a team? I think in that context, a learning organization is one where there is every opportunity given to every employee to be the best version of themselves. That's track A. So if you are a subject matter expert, you become the best version there is of that subject matter, of that piece of expertise. The second element to that is how can I as an individual branch out? What else can I learn? What else can I add to my skill set that makes me unique, that makes me eminently hireable, and drives my value up in the equation? So I think a true learning organization is one where you keep track of the amount of learning that's being consumed, but not necessarily one where you mandate a certain amount of training. Because mandating training is like, for those of you who are still in college, that's like, having to take your exams or take your tests. That's mandated learning. It's important, perhaps, but in my opinion, it's a very narrow construct. So once again, learning organization is one where there's a culture where it's important to learn. And I think equally important is in a learning organization, failure is not a bad word because it means that you've learned something new or you've experimented or you've pushed the envelope, you've done something that's different. Only then do you learn. When a lot of individuals learn, the organization learns, the organization grows. That's how I'd look at it.
Yeah, great. Actually, Abhishek has got an interesting take on this. In an earlier conversation, I think in this group he's a bit of an outlier. In fact, he sort of now that I know what Amardeep really thinks about it. I think there's some alignment there. Initially, I thought actually he's an outlier, but I think there are two of a kind there. I want him to talk about upskilling. He's got a really radical view about it, and again in the context of learning organization.
Okay, Naman, thank you so much.
How the learning happens,
Sorry?
How the learning happens.
Sure. I mean, it's a pleasure to be here. I came more to just hear from others and maybe share some perspectives. This is not prescriptive in any sense. I was telling Prince that these things work in our context. Kissflow is like is like an island. So what grows in that island need not necessarily grow in other places. So I don't know about applicability, but at least it'll be interesting for you to hear. So that's the idea. I'll come to I thought it'll be controversial, but I don't think so. Like you said, Amardeep seems to align. For me, learning organization is a place which, a lot of these things require clarity because we use a lot of these words without knowing what it means. So I think the number one thing is seeking a lot of clarity. A learning organization, in my opinion, should punish people who are not curious. At least make them uncomfortable, right? Because at the end of the day, you can talk a lot about what you aspire to, but if the people do not align to that, if you're still tolerating them, then you're actually going against what you want. So learning culture for me is a place where people who are not curious, who are not biased to seeking failure, actually you should seek failure. If you're always successful, then you're probably it's like a heavyweight boxer playing flyweight, right? You're probably just underselling yourself. So if you've not failed in the recent 6 months, you're probably on the wrong track. But there is a safety net, right? If you fail, despite the use of your best judgment and trying something ambitious, for me, that is a learning organization. any organization that is okay with you just following the rules, ticking the check boxes, saying things which, like we would always say, right, if there are 3 people in a meeting and 2 people agree, one of them is not needed, right? So things like that, how do you put to practice? So having a high bar matters. Everybody aspires, like I told you, everybody wants a 6-pack, but nobody is willing to put in the hard work. So everybody likes to learn, everybody says they are curious, everybody nods their head when Amardeep says you should be okay to fail. But how many times have you failed? What are you curious about? Curiosity means digging deep. You should have a contrary view of opinion and have the courage to speak it out. So in my mind, that's the last part. A learning organization has a lot of courageous people. We use the phrase strong opinions weakly held in Kissflow, which basically means you have thought through something so deeply, but at the same time, you're willing to put it out there, get it debated, and if the other person has an alternate point of view and it makes sense, you're okay. Because your self-esteem is not tied into being right, but it's into finding out what is right. And if that is role modeled from the top, not in speeches, in everyday meetings, slowly it trickles down. But if you have meetings where everybody nods to everybody else and finally aligns to the highest paid opinion in the room, that's not a learning organization for me. Yeah, so I don't know if that's controversial enough for you.
It wasn't actually. The thing is, fine. Anyway, now over to Mr. Bijumon. See, actually, if we just look at some companies, training will be easy if there is just one service line. But there are some companies where there are various service lines and all that. Then trying to prepare a training program for employees would be challenging, particularly when there is cross-pollination of talent. Like you get a group of employees working on a particular service line onto another service line. And Ejada is one company, and Bijumon has worked in, he's with Ejada, and even the earlier company also is more or less, mirrors what you find in Ejada, Temenos. That was where he was working earlier. So I would want to hear from him, how this challenge can be dealt with.
Yeah, first of all, I think, my friends have already kind of alluded to what a learning organization is about. And to grow, to survive itself, every organization has to be a learning organization for sure. And there are 2 aspects to it. One, of course, is the people's aspiration to be a better person than themselves, their growth aspirations. Second is an alignment with the market needs, because you may have the desire, but the organization needs this particular skill to, and that connects from the very market research team to the sales team, right back to the hiring team and to the training team. So that ecosystem has to be set in place, first of all, for any organization to be a proper learning organization. So you have the aspirations, you have the market needs, and you have the ecosystem that ties up well. I think at a later point of time, maybe we will dive a little deeper into that. From this kind of, the market needs comes the necessity for cross-training, reskilling. I had the opportunity to be with 2 organizations when that industry itself was going through a tremendous change, and that necessitated a lot of, reskilling, cross-skilling. People from absolutely a different path had to be moved to a new skill because the whole industry was changing. First, with Verizon from 2002 to 2010, when I joined there, it was a purely landline company. It was doing ISP, it was providing telephones. The guys did, network planning, provisioning, billing, those kind of stuff. That was what they had to do. But in a few years' time, or by the time I left, it was completely a mobile-led company. iPhone had happened, smartphones had come in. In between that, there was this fiber to the home thing where we had triple play of voice, data, and video going in at the same time. all these meant that the employees who were working for these had to be completely reskilled. A guy who was, planning a wire line under the earth through a copper line from a city to the other city or within the city to homes had to learn how the triple play plays. That gives you a lot of opportunity. Same way, when the mobile thing came in, the opportunities became completely different and the skills that are required. But you can't fire all your, 3,000, 4,000 people and hire all new skills. You had to evolve. We had to cross-skill these same people into where the market was actually requiring people in the future. Secondly, 15 years I spent with a company called Temenos. When I entered the banking had already gotten into online banking, at best, internet-based banking, which was penetration would have been 30-35%. A lot of branches, heavy branch staff, people, personal, connect-based banking. Today, I don't think many of you have seen your banker. Some of you may not have even stepped into your bank to open an account itself or close an account or get a loan. So the tremendous change that happened over a period of time in the back end requires people from maybe producing certain softwares that run to platforms where you sit in Chennai in one room and run banks in the US, in the UK, or in the Middle East through cloud in a SaaS model. Required a completely different mindset, different technology knowledge, different security awareness, all that together. And even a different work environment, especially when you deal with sensitive information and client systems, you need to be even in a situation where you don't even have an access to your smartphone. So all these things, from a mindset, from a technology, and from industry evolution, a lot of reskilling had to be done. Again, organizations do not prefer going into a mode of, okay, these, people don't fit into this new culture, so you get rid of them, get somebody new. That doesn't work that way. People are aspirational. Maybe, a few of them who can't, adapt, are not agile enough to learn, might get, behind in that whole journey. But otherwise, organizations investing in this, in reskilling, cross-skilling especially, because from a services industry perspective, now that I'm in a services industry, technology, moving from one technology to the other is one part of it. Another part of it is industry knowledge. My Java guy working on whatever technology, after 5 years of working in Temenos, would be a techno-functional person who knows either retail or wealth management or digital banking. One of the banking stuff, he would be thoroughly as good as a business analyst. So both these skills are important, and cross-skilling is important. Beyond a stage, it does not differentiate whether you are a techie or a business guy, because it converges at some point of time. Sorry, it's a little longer answer for a short question.
It was very enlightening. Actually, there are a couple of points I would like to latch on to. One is the mindset. He was talking about mindset towards learning, and another thing he was talking about tech and tech. And in fact, I would like to just dwell on the idea of soft skills, because now we are so hung upon tech skills and all that. I think we are losing ground where soft skills are concerned. I'll come to that in a bit. Before that, I just want to go to Professor Vinay. And Professor Vinay, seeks to pull executives out of cubicles and draw them into classrooms. So his idea of upskilling is to get people to sit in the classroom. So I would like to know, I'm sure you're making a case for a structured learning program for executives and all that. You think it is extremely essential? Because generally we are used to learning on the job. Executives are used to that. So,
thank you. I am basically a management trainer, and I've been training senior executives for a very long time in various organizations. Of course, I'm on the other side of the coin, in the sense that I'm not an executor. I only make people, leaders, think about their problems and then come to their solutions in a certain way. And of course, these conversations help us understand concepts in a different way. Now, the question is why, what is a learning organization? I think we should answer a counterintuitive question. Okay, what are those organizations? Why do organizations fail? I mean, when organizations fail, invariably you'll have a very defining feature about the organization, and because the organizations don't learn, you get into a situation where the organizations fail. Now, there's a very interesting book, very old book, 1990. Why can't elephants dance? Okay, and it's a story of transformation of IBM. Okay, a very large organization at that point in time, and it was actually supposed to be getting worse. And then one leader comes and then, it transforms the whole organization. And that's the problem, in the sense that, the book says that if somebody calls the company, immediately the telephone operator basically says the number. Okay, this is the number that you have dialed. So that from that organization to, hey, you reached IBM, how can I help you? Or something like that. So I'm saying basically what is happening is, as organizations grow, you have internal structures also growing in a certain way. And then there's going to be a legacy. And people who have actually built these structures start becoming leaders, and there is this reluctance to actually reinvent the business model in a certain way. And when new ideas come, there is resistance. And that is the story of every transformation. There is a general organizational reluctance to actually understand change and actually change. Even if you understand change, sometimes people don't change. For instance, Nokia was, knew that, there is a huge mobile device technology that is going to, is changing by the hour, the Android technology, but it didn't actually pick up. And it thought that this is going to be one more fad, and they never invested. So therefore, it had to actually die. So similarly, a whole lot of changes are happening right now. People are talking about agentic AI and the AI taking over, and a lot of new technological innovations. All of them have consequence, but no organization know exactly what is the type of technology that they should basically pick up and then actually bet on. And therefore, you will always have some fads coming and then some vanishing, and organizations picking up the right technologies at the right time and actually changing. Okay, those are the organizations which completely become leaders eventually, and that is the whole game. When we say learning has to be it should be the culture of an organization. If it is not the culture of organization, then you have organizations actually failing because of that. One of the key things that typically, when organizations send their executives for executive training, most of the executive training is like a very short program on a certain technology or a certain skill set. Now, what is happening in this program is essentially the executives are made to think about their own decision skills and where actually their teams are faltering, how they are supposed to rebuild their skill set in a certain way. And so when you have while you are in the job, you are not thinking. You have to basically come out of that environment and actually have that space for thinking about your own skills in a certain way, your own job, your own KRAs in a certain way, and that these executive programs give those that space. So you start reflecting, and therefore whatever actually as a trainer I'm not really teaching, I'm actually making them think. And then there are some concepts which appeal to them, and then you take those, this thing works for me because, I think I did almost this in my job. So maybe balanced scorecard is something that I can probably use because, part of that is already something that is part of my thinking. And therefore, this toolbox is actually going to make sense back home again. I'll use a version of that in my job in a certain way. So this reflection is needed. See, by the way, managing is actually not an academic subject. Like, it's not nanophysics. Okay, nanophysics has a lot of theory and a lot of the concepts and things like that. Managing has to do with practice only. And all the management theories are actually talking about practice, and most of these theories have come from different domains. Some have come from regular science, statistics, mathematics, psychology, economics, finance. A combination of all these subjects is actually, but each and every subject is actually talking about how to practice management as a skill set. So therefore, the practice itself is changing quite dynamically. What was true in yesteryears is not true now. So you need to basically gear up. If you are not learning, you are not managing. It's a very straight correlation. You have to learn to manage, and there is no other way. And learning is a lifelong skill, and that is the essence of an organization which is learning, which is also invested in learning.
Very interesting. Actually, I was going to ask another question. As I said, I was going to dwell on the idea of the mindset for learning. But now that Professor Vinay has raised some interesting points, so I'm going to ask another question. It's basically about learning. It's again in the context of a learning organization only. Like learning is hardwired into storytelling. It's essentially about documenting the lessons that we've learned. You take an organization which is very old. A lot of lessons would have happened in the past and all that, and they probably would be lost to us, the current generation, for want of documentation. Again, storytelling. So, like for instance, the one thing I remember is I don't know how many people here can relate to this. I'm sure Professor Vinay can, and probably Amardeep, and also Bijumon, and Abhishek is a bit younger. And so 1983, this match India played against Zimbabwe. We couldn't see it because it was not recorded. I think there was a problem, in the rights and stuff like that. And it is a huge loss, the way Kapil Dev played. And that happens in organizations all the time, for want of documentation. So I would like to know, in fact, I would want Amardeep to go first and all that, because RR Donnelley is, I think it's got a long history, right? And how many years old is it?
This is year 166.
Yeah, I mean, even Hindu is actually not as old, and we are almost getting there. Anyway. Yeah, can you just talk about the role of storytelling as in some kind of organizational history, where again this question of failure also is very interesting. But one thing I just need to tell you people, you be careful when you use the failure word, because we have a lot of students here, okay? And you say it's okay to fail, and we have a lot of students here. Sorry?
I think it's
not in the academic context.
It's crucial to your employability and your mental health and your well-being to understand that it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if you haven't failed, you've not tried anything new. My personal failure philosophy is something that my teams live by, and that is fail fast, fail forward, fail cheap. And that's how we try and run parts of our business, so that encourages innovation, that lets people think, and it's okay to fail. Because when you fail, you know that you don't know something, and then you have a choice, whether you learn or whether you don't. If you learn, you will grow. If you don't, you know what's going to happen. Anyway, talking about the subject about storytelling, I think it's hugely important to learn from the lessons of the past. And that's something that every generation that passes through either the workplace or through school and college, two things happen. The generation passing through is complaining about how useless the previous generation was and how they messed it up for you. And the generation that's just passed by says, what a useless generation that knows nothing. So unfortunately, in the middle of these two constructs, we are, as individuals and as organizations, losing out on an opportunity to learn. Because when I look at RRD as a company, we started life as a printer. We printed the phone books, then we started printing phone bills, then we started printing the boxes the phones were made in. But over a period of time, when digital came about, we made a switch from being a printer to a marketing and communications company. So we don't print. There was a time when we printed the Harry Potter. The entire Harry Potter series is printed by R.R. Donnelley globally. The maximum number of Bibles in the world are printed by R.R. Donnelley. We used to print Time, Newsweek, Vanity Fair, Vogue. We have printed just about every single magazine and book of consequence. We sold that business. Let me ask you, where are books and magazines today? They're on this device. So someone in RRD was thinking, someone in RRD was saying, okay, let's let go of this part of our life that we know so well, and let's jump into something that's brand new that we know nothing about. The organization learned, leaders learned, and then you created this culture of pushing the envelope. Has anyone ever ordered a parcel from overseas that came by FedEx? FedEx? You know those RFID labels? The technology for the label was developed by RRD. And what's is that we are not a label making company. We are a printer. We started life as, but somebody somewhere said, let's not stop with printing the label. Let's create trackability. Let's create findability into the label. Okay, so let me ask you a question. This is the quiz question time. For prizes, please reach out to Prince. Let me ask this question. Which is the biggest transport company in the world? India Post. So, the right answer is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has the maximum number of trucks in the world. They are the world's biggest transport company. Which is the biggest bank in the world? Morgan Stanley is an iBank, Citibank. So here's where it gets interesting. The biggest financial institution in let me ask you the question. The biggest financial institution in the world. These are the safe answers. The answer is the Ant Group. The group that owns Alibaba, the biggest online retail group in the world, is also the world's biggest financial institution. And that's the lessons that somebody in those companies have learned along the way. Before Coke bought their own trucks, they were paying a vendor to transport their bottles all over the place. But someone took a decision, someone learned, and that has become part of Coca-Cola's DNA. That has become part of Alibaba and Ant Group's DNA. In our case, it's become part of the RRD DNA. So stories of success, stories of failure are both hugely important, and they need to become part of your organizational DNA so that the next generation of leaders that come through, while they finish making fun of the people who went before them, they've also learned something about something that they did. When we go to our office, our head office in Chicago, there is a whole museum dedicated to the history of our company. And many old companies do that. The Hindu does that. And that is why they retain the preeminence in the marketplace today, despite being many, many years old.
Actually, when you know the history, learn about the history of a company, it instills pride, in you about the company. You feel good about working there. That is one thing. And again, another thing, even for practical reasons, I think we need to document learning lessons. One is because learning is hardly linear. Like, for instance, I can relate to that because the Hindu has got a style guide. And Hindu, you can just say Hindu basically follows British English. So an youngster, you can just tell an youngster, okay, fine, just it's British English. You follow it. But it's not as easy as that. It's nuanced. Because in the style guide, you just notice there are some places where we just veer away from British English. Like, for instance, doctor. In British English, has got a this thing. It doesn't have a dot, doctor. But then we use a dot. That is because we're aligned with the common usage, the more prevalent usage. So unless we document things and all that, this learning, the lessons would be lost. So that is one thing. Anyway. Fine. Now, just going to this question, in fact, I had in mind, it's about the mindset to learning, because there are two kinds of learning skilling. One is upskilling. Upskilling is basically you level up in the same lane. Okay. And the more difficult one is reskilling. Reskilling is you change lane. which is what is happening now because of AI and all that, In many industries, people have to be retrained and all that. And retraining and reskilling is not fun most of the time because, it pulls you out of your comfort zone. And anybody who's had the fortune or misfortune of, having married the person they've dated would know the contrast. The reskilling that is required after marriage, the skills that, just keep you happy. Not glamorous, like, taking out the trash. Sorry?
That's a reset, not a reskill.
Yeah, I think you can talk a lot about it. So it's basically about, kind of taking out the trash. And these are the things that will make you attractive in the eyes of your, significant other. So that's exactly what happens in retraining. How do you make retraining, fun? Maybe you can probably just talk about
So basically...
Reskilling, sorry.
Reskilling.
Yeah.
So every time when executives choose a program, most of the times, people have this objective, okay, how do I basically sort of take up leadership positions, maybe now, maybe a few years later. So typically, there is already a sort of a needs analysis for every program when we're designing a program. So so upskilling is actually, you are defining a new paradigm. When you have to reskill, it's actually you are pivoting from one type of a skill to the other skill, And for instance, I'll tell you, a lot of marketing executives used to come to my program. I used to do a finance for non-specialist program, And finance is not taught to them in the regular way, even though if they've done their MBA, it is a thing that is forgotten because they're not using it anymore. So when they come to this workshop and when they actually go through this training, now they basically it requires for them to understand the business model, and business model's language is finance. So therefore you have to sort of redefine, come out of your comfort zone that, hey, this is the territory, this is the target, and all of that jargon that you're using, you have to come out of that and think about newer paradigms so that you have so it definitely pulls you out of that comfort zone. And when you anything that requires rewiring, okay, is actually tough on people. So that every reskilling project is a very tough this thing. So I do have these very senior people, and it is also very difficult to teach senior people because already you have a mindset and then conviction, because your conviction is something that is used every day for them. So I have to take a call and nobody else is going to take a call. So therefore, my decision is like final kind of a thing, So therefore, these things require a mindset transformation. And first few hours actually is how do you actually bring that fluidity in their thinking. And thereafter, things start. If it's a 5-day program, first day is actually a little bit of unwinding. It takes a day for you to actually get out of the thinking basket that you are in, and then get out of it and then start learning. So that one needs to basically stay with the thinking process. There's this Daniel Kahneman's system, the system 1 thinking and system 2 thinking. System 1 thinking is how do you drive to your workplace. You don't think about driving to your workplace because you're driving every day. So it's already wired. System 2 is rewiring. Whenever you have to rewire, it's a very tough process. So, but then it is a necessary thing if you want to get into leadership roles. So therefore, that motivation is the thing that drives them to get into this everything has a, unlike academics, which is part of my business, but the point is, businesses have to have cash flow implications. So therefore, it is important that they come out of these frameworks and start relearning some of the things. That's the.
Sometimes actually reskilling is required, absolutely required, and all that for the organization's health. And but then human beings actually, like, invariably we are drawn to things only if we see something in it for us. That's a nature. So maybe I would want Amardeep to talk about, how can you make it fascinating, or rather, kind of, I'm sure actually leaders will have to model, the right behavior in terms of skilling and all that. And it has to be top down. And maybe you should make reskilling attractive, and maybe you can probably speak from your experience, even others can join. Abhishek after that, and Bijumon.
Yeah, sure, thanks. That's a very important question, because that begs for every employee, the question is always what's in it for me, right? So if you've established a culture where learning is important, I think it's very important that the top-down approach, so that even employees need to see senior leaders also going and learning new things and going back to school if required, learning with them, reverse mentoring. So if you've got that sort of momentum going, then there's two key elements from an organizational standpoint. How many of you watch House? The House. What I like about that show is it's about the differentiated diagnosis, right? It's not just what the results say. It's a differentiated diagnosis. So, for human beings respond to rewards or punishment. So you can do one of two things. Yes, I love the idea that he says, like Abhishek pointed out, and ensure that learning becomes a part of your thing, or you won't progress. The other way of looking at it is provide the differentiation, right? So if somebody has acquired a new skill, it needs to be reflected in their paycheck. You need to give them an opportunity to apply these skills and get compensated for it. So this also shakes up conventional ways of doing business. Your existing business model says that your salary structure is fixed. But then if you can bring in a new way of saying, okay, I can work for 8 hours this job, but if I want to, I can add another 2 hours and work like an internal gig workforce. There are a number of ways, but we have to ensure that the additional skill the employee has picked up, because she or he has that will to learn, you reward it financially, and then you reward it in their titles or their designations or something that they can show to others, that talks about them, that allows them to actualize their potential. So learning can never work if it's pushed. It has to be a pull. So what is the pull? The pull has got to be something that appeals to somebody, and that has to be, you've got to see it in your pay packet, and you've got to see it in the way other people see you.
Yeah, just one reminder, actually, we have just 7 minutes to go. So I just want both Abhishek and Bijumon.
Maybe we can go, and then if there's time, I'll.
And then, after that, I just want Professor Vinay to just talk a bit about the salient features of the program that you have, PGDM and all that, briefly. I just want this finished in 6 minutes, so that we have 10 minutes to take questions from the audience. Fine. So in the next 6.5 minutes, I think we'll finish this.
So I think to continue from what has been said is that organizations do put in place, encouraging, either incentivizing it or both punishing it. I've tried both, and both seem to work, but a combination of both together works. Skill, incentives, quarterly based on your target skilling part, initially does boost up things, but after a year or so, people start factoring that into your normal pay, and then it's no more incentive. The lack of it is a punishment. So that's what I have seen, but we have been able to drive achievement of let's say a certain run of reskilling with these incentives. Of course, there is the aspect which earlier I referred to, that you have to stimulate people's own desire to be a better themselves. So that aspect, both to succeed and to survive, both are important.
Sure. I think maybe one thing, because we're talking a lot about the organization, I'm glad you asked what's in it for me. I think number one, I think we should stop caring so much about the organization. In our mind, we say the organization doesn't exist. There is no organization. It's just a bunch of people. As Amardeep said, somebody in Coke decided, hey, I want to change this, and it changed. In Kissflow, we talk about this. Kissflow is not competing against another company. One guy sitting in marketing in Kissflow is competing with another marketing guy in the other company. If you have the best guy there, your chances of winning are high, right? So there is no company doesn't exist, organization doesn't exist. So the question we always ask is, who is a superstar? Who do you want in your team who will maximize your chance of winning? And you will do whatever is necessary, pay whatever is necessary to get that person, provided they are delivering that result. That is simple. Like, there's so many conversations I've had with Suresh, who's our founder and CEO. He says, hey, I'm willing to pay that premium. But if they are demanding that much, I will expect that much. That is where the gap is. People want titles, people want salary, but they are not delivering the goods, right? So you have to ask, and I ask myself, what makes a superstar? 2 or 3 things. One, high level of agency. They believe they can get things done. They don't say, this person didn't do it, that rule doesn't allow me to do it, this policy isn't there, nobody gave me permission, it's not my job responsibility. Something has to be done, go do it. Can you do it? If there's something in the way, knock that down, right? Do it respectfully, but the aim is to win. Are you a winner? That's number 1. Number 2, you are on your own journey to mastery, because this whole idea of learning organization, we believe in we have 2 or 3 Bibles in our organization. One of them is the 5th discipline, which is the art and science of the learning organization by Peter Senge, right? He talks about this thing called journey to mastery. You are on a continuous quest to become the best at what you want to be, which is why I said failure is good. Because failure sometimes tells you what you are not good at. In school, you are punished for failure. Actually, they should incentivize you to get, see, they'll tell you, if you get 40 in something, go for tuition for that. But if you get 90, it's good. The aim is to get the 90 to 100. Because in the real world, that 10 marks is more important than moving a 40 to a 75. This clarity a lot of people don't have. Most people try to say, okay, what do I need to do to get promoted or to get a job? I will do it. I will meet the criteria. But if you're on a journey to mastery, you are on some different track. Somebody will spot you. They will create opportunities for you. The title that you see behind me is not something that I applied for. I was just curious, why do good companies always become bureaucratic? They all start great. After a point of time, they become big, but nobody wants to work in them. And they all say the company used to be like this when I was there, blah, blah, blah. So the question was, how do you scale a company without losing its soul? That's a problem that I happened to fall into Kissflow. We figured things out, and then he said, okay, there seems to be business value in it. Let's create this role. That was 9 years ago. I'm still breaking my head on the problem. But that is what is missing. People are not taking the time to figure out what I want to be great at. The company cannot fix that problem. And when you try to be great at something, company is not going to reward your journey. Companies are selfish. They will reward only when you are a finished product. So you need to ask yourself, am I willing to go through that pain? If not, no problem. Get a nice job, get a nice family, settle down, relax. Don't worry. But if you are serious, doesn't matter age, qualification, nothing, go deep, go hard. You will land somewhere where you cannot think of now. But that is what is a superstar is on. And those are the kind of people we want in the company. Right? Whether it takes them to reskill, upskill, rejig, all of that is secondary for us. They will figure it out. We will give them the space to do it. Right? But we cannot tell them to do it. Does it make sense?
Yes, it does. A lot of sense. Yeah, I just want Professor Vinay to just talk briefly about the program. So, the PGDMX program that SRM is offering.
So basically, I think some of the ideas highlighted here by the panelists, there is an appreciation. So what we did is, we so it's like, how do we redefine MBA? This is something that is a conversation in academics all over the world. So not every IIM has a same MBA program. Every IIM's MBA is a different MBA program because everybody is innovating in some or the other way. There is a 10-month program, MBA program in Europe. There is a 15-month program in US. So everybody is coming up with a framework that sort of gives the best possible, managerial skilling opportunity in the shortest period. So the point is, when we designed PGDMX and then in association with National University of Singapore, we are doing this program. The idea was, how do you make sure that, in management we have, when we design a curriculum, there are 3 frameworks, knowing, doing and being is the architecture. So there is something that understand, you need to apply. When you apply, you actually use that concept, and it's called doing. And when you start repeatedly doing something, you become perfect in that, and therefore you become what you do. So there are 3 stages: knowing, doing and being. So management is all about doing actually. And in a typical MBA, what happens is you deliver a curriculum in a 2-year period, and thereafter they go and work and experiment some of those concepts by doing. So we thought, why not come up with a program where the executives don't have to actually quit job. They should be working on in their jobs, yet get the skill of a typical rigorous MBA program. So we said, this PGDM program is for working executives who have more than 3 years of experience. They can come for short number of days. There are about 6 residencies. Each residency is about 7 to 9 days. And we have the best of the professors landing there in the campus teaching various courses. After these residencies, there is inter-residency. We call it inter-residency, where you are actually working in your company, but then you still have some learning assignments that you should do, because you are supposed to apply what you have learned in your job. And then there are some components of learning that you have to submit. And then there is a sort of a feedback system that the instructors are going to basically work with while they are working. So it is a combination of a rigorous program in short time. They come to the campus, get trained, go back and work with those concepts in a certain way, submit some assignments. And this is a 15-month long program, and one of the residencies in Singapore with NUS. We take the participants to NUS Computing School, and then they deliver some courses there. And this is the structure that we came up with, and this is the right structure, I believe, because everybody will have the opportunity to actually work with those concepts by doing some things, and that's the whole idea. And in a typical MBA program, what happens is you learn and then do. So why don't we come up with a program that allows you to actually work with those concepts while you are actually, working. That's the idea of this program, and it came up really well.
Thank you so much, Professor. Okay, now we just come to the end of the panel discussion. I need to say something because I'm a hopeless pen pusher. And journalists, generally look for stories everywhere. But I could see a story in every thread, of thought here, and all the responses. So this is something I'm taking the liberty to promise something. So what I thought could be done is actually this particular session. We'll try and transcribe and just put it into a coherent whole, or with sections and all that. The various ideas that were put forth. Probably just create a small e-document or something and all that, and share it with the people that have come here. So it will take us some time, but then I'm sure, but then we'll certainly do it. We'll send it across and all that to Shafiq and the team. Now it's on to the audience. You can probably ask some questions. Yes. Yep. Yep.
So I love the word using culture shift, culture ambassador. Like I actually love it. We need new terms when it comes to work to start with, and I love the whole panel and the stories that are shared. But I'm just talking, particularly I'm talking to Abhishek regarding this. You said you have spent 9 years figuring out how to actually connect with people and give them the clarity that is needed to build products, right? I think we have figured it out. I can say this out aloud because we have made some certain complex decisions playable and interactive. It's like within 1 hour, we can actually take it offline, but I think we have figured it out and we have deployed it in colleges and events, and it applies to every single sector. And I mean, we have done something rare. Again, we'll take it off stage, but I love the word culture shepherd, and I would love to know more about what went behind naming this, right?
இல்லை சின்ன ஐ மீன் யாரும் இங்கே தமிழ் நிறைய பேருக்கு பேச தெரியும்னு நினைக்கிறேன். மாடு மேய்க்கிறதுன்னு சொல்கிறது அது வந்து கிளாமரஸாக போட்டது ஆக்சுவலாக ஜோக்ஸ் அபார்ட் எனிவே.
Yeah, sure. We'll talk after this, but I think okay. There were a lot of there was no culture shepherd around as far as we are aware. I think there was a lot of culture czars. There was some fancy titles people were having in the industry. But see, this is the beauty, right? Like it was just like a 5-minute conversation trying to figure out, okay, what is it that you are doing? How does this make sense? You're not a typical HR guy. In fact, when I did my MBA, I thought HR was the easy subject, so I avoided it. But it just came up in a conversation. Basically, it was what problem are you trying to solve and how are you trying to solve it? Scaling can be done through policies, processes, systems in a very formal way, or it can be done informally. Informally is culture, and you are guarding it. So the title is actually not for me. The title is to signal to the rest of the organization, this matters. Culture matters. And so there is no junior culture shepherd, senior culture shepherd. I don't have a career ladder. I've been culture shepherd for 9 years. But it's more of a signal to tell that this matters. And like you called out, it's a good conversation starter. Right? When I interview somebody and I tell them I'm the culture shepherd, suddenly in their mind they are like, oh, this company seems to be serious about this, right? So it's more of a signal to ourselves and a reminder that this matters.
Anybody else?
So question from my side. This is Dr. Shri Aarti from founder of Braille. The question to you, Abhishek, that is you are telling that gig workers, what is the retention strategy? You told that they should have their own drive to run the company. But most of the companies are handling the gig workers to adapt to their situations, like that. So which suits the best?
I was telling Prince earlier, see, the business model is going to impact the kind of policy you apply or the practice or the initiative applies. So that's why I said it's not like a one-size-fits-all. But having said that, there is a good book called The Alliance by Reid Hoffman, one of the founders of LinkedIn, one of the co-founders of PayPal, right? He said, and this is what Manish Abrewal, since you talked about gig workers, right? TeamLease co-founder said, the employee-employer relationship has moved from a long-time family marriage commitment to a taxi cab relationship. So that is the reality, which means you look at employment not as a lifetime contract or even a long-term contract. You look at a series of tours, T-O-U-R-S, right? In the military analogy, everybody goes for a tour of duty. So the Alliance talks about 3 tours of duties. There is a rotational tour, transformational tour, and a foundational tour. Rotational is like your gig workers. It's a very, let's say it's an entry-level job to mid-level job. Anybody can come, do it, and go. If the person goes, it's easy for you to replace that person. So it's not like you're so invested in that person. Mass happens there. So you're very clear. These are rotational jobs. Then there are transformational jobs, which are high impact jobs for the company. There you invest in paying a lot to get the right person in because they are cracking a significant problem in the company. So, but your commitment is only to crack that problem. That could be 18 months to 36 months. Once you crack that problem, you and your boss have another conversation. Hey, I joined this company to crack this, which is what happened to me. I came here to crack this. It's been 9 months. What do I do now? You renegotiate. It's not a continuous employment contract, though technically it is. So then you find out, okay, there is another problem. Do you want to crack it? Okay, then you're signing up for another tour. So every 18 to 36 months, you're signing up. Somebody who does multiple transformational tours becomes a foundational member of the company. It is not tenure based. It is the fact that you are doing high impact work for the company over multiple times. So the company can now trust on you for both competence and commitment. So the mental model we use to understand employer-employee relationships, we use gig workers. I think the alliance framework is better. Is it a rotational job, transformational job, foundational job? What tour are they on? If you and that other person are in alignment, even if they leave in 1 year, 3 years, it's okay. Because that's what they signed up for. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
Good evening, sir. I am Professor Magendaran from J. Chancellor College. The second, I will not expect your communication, sir. You are told once doing the job, not doing any job, give punishment. You give proper training, the senior person give proper training means automatically the employee do very well and will go to high level. Give answer, sir. Give answer, sir.
This is the last question. No more questions.
So, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. I'm going to respectfully disagree because learning is a two-way street. No amount of learning intervention, training intervention is going to work if the recipient has not signed up for it. Okay, so I might be the most, or Abhishek might be the most supportive, kindest leader in the world, but if the employee does not have the will to learn, it will fail. So in business, there's skill and there's will. Both are equally important. Any skilling, upskilling, training, learning program will fail if the employee does not have the will to succeed, will to do something different. So it's not linear. So, and that's the only way I can answer it. Respectfully disagree, but it's not linear.
Second.
Add one bit to it, if you don't mind. Okay, we need to be clear. The job of the company is to be successful. Job of the individual is to be happy and successful. If there is an alignment between the two, work together. But the problem happens because employees expect think the company's job is to give them a career. You cannot outsource. Somebody said, no, AI can outsource your, you can understand, but it cannot outsource your thinking, reasoning process. So if you know what makes you successful and happy, and if it happens to align with that company strategy to be successful, work together. You will learn, you will fail, you'll do everything, but only because you share a vision, which is again part of that book, Fifth Discipline. I'd encourage you to read it. That, if it is there, it works. So nothing feels like a burden. You have to learn to get promoted. You are doing it because you see that's how I can be happy and successful in life. If it's taking up an executive program, go for it. But you're doing it because the company is mandating you, it's still okay, but probably not the best reason to do it. Company's reason for existence is different. Individuals' reasons for existence is different. That doesn't mean they are in conflict. That is a partnership. That partnership is not lifetime. That is only when, like Prince said, you date and you marry. Everything else is a contract.
Yeah, thanks.
So I
would like to go on,
question.
but then we can't keep another set of good people waiting. We already eaten into their time. So if there are any questions, I think you can probably write into us, and maybe we'll direct it to the panelists and get the answers for you. Yep. Fine. So thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a bigger round of applause for our panelists and our moderator. Well, this has been an incredible wrap-up of our first session. Our panelists have beautifully reframed what it means to be a professional today. Well, we've learned that failure is not a bad word. It is simply a masterclass in growth, provided we approach it with curiosity to analyze that and the discipline to keep track and learn from what it leaves behind. It's heartening to see how, despite the different mindsets across the generations, ladies and gentlemen, the thread remains the same, which is the relentless hunger to learn, to unlearn, to upskilling, to reskilling, and to stay relatable in this shifting world. Please give another round of applause for them. Thank you very much for your perspectives. Now I'd like to request Mr. Shafiqur Rahman, the General Manager, Events, Ideation, Activation, The Hindu, to kindly come up on the stage and to honor them, please. Thank you, gentlemen. Yes, if you have further questions and doubts, feel free to write it to us. We do have our Hindu team here. Maybe you can just help them by giving them your questions and the doubts that you have, and we will reach out to you with your answers. Ladies and gentlemen, the first session was all about navigating the system. The second session, or the next session, is about building it. The Learning Entrepreneur, this isn't just a title, ladies and gentlemen, it is a survival strategy. In the world where market changes overnight, the most successful founders aren't the ones with the best ideas. They are the ones with the best learning quotient. We are going to dive into the grit, the pivot, and the constant evolution required to scale a dream into a reality. Now I'd like to invite and introduce our panelists. We have with us Mr. Balaji Sampath. He is the founder of the AHA Group and AID India. He is an IIT Madras alumnus with PhD. Yes, sir, please walk to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause as he walks to the stage. He is with a PhD from the University of Maryland, dedicated to transforming education and rural development in India. Through his initiatives, he has impacted millions of students and underserved communities. And he has earned some prestigious global recognition for his contributions. Welcome to the panel, sir. A round of applause once again, please. We have with us Mr. Puru Gupta. He is the co-founder and the former CEO of True Elements, where he built a leading clean label food brand serving over 10 million households and led its successful acquisition by Marico. A turnaround specialist and a founder of Proteus Partners, he advises growth stage businesses on strategy, on scaling, and brand building. Namaskar, swagat hai to the panel. We have with us Dr. N. Balaji. He is the Additional Director, Innovation, Incubation, and Entrepreneurship at SRM Institute of Science and Technology. With over 2 decades of expertise in computer science research and startup ecosystem, a prolific researcher and a mentor, he has published 80+ papers, incubated 30+ startups, and actively drives innovation through academia-industry collaboration. Welcome to the panel, sir. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator for this session. The moderator is Miss Sangeeta Kandavel. She is the Senior Assistant Editor at The Hindu. Please give a round of applause to our panelist and our moderator. Over to you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Ekta. Thank you. So, good evening, everybody. Before we begin, how many of you here want to become entrepreneurs? Please put up your hands. Just 4, 5. Okay. And why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Okay, and the gentleman there, why do you want to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, the reason is I can provide an opportunity or the jobs to others. and I can make a change in the system.
Okay, wonderful. So today we'll listen from the people here about what you can learn, what you can unlearn in entrepreneurship. So we'll dive into the session now. So Puru, we'll start with you. So let's go back to your day zero when you actually started your business. So when you started True Elements, what were the problems that you faced and why did you first want to start True Elements? And also if you could tell us about how the journey began, what happened after that, and what happened post Marico's acquisition also. What are the things you had to learn and what are the things you had to unlearn?
Hello, am I audible? Yeah. Okay, thank you. First of all, I think it's rare that I am in a room addressing people where only 4 people are interested in starting up. But I hope that there are more of you who eventually will be keen. Okay, now there are 6, so great. Okay, 7, now that's meaningful. Okay. Just to be honest, I think how True Elements started was not like I had a vision and everything. True Elements was probably the 17th or the 18th pivot when I started up. I started up with a passion, with something that I thought, okay, I want to do it, just like you mentioned about clinics. I started on a I basically lost my dad to cancer. It was a very late stage cancer, and I realized that I had this whole thing that it was detected at a stage where we didn't know that there is something called as cancer. So what prompted me was that can you create some culture of preventive healthcare where people are conscious before it gets too late? That was the only thing I knew. I didn't know how to start, what to start, started with distribution, multiple pivots. Eventually, True Elements came in as something. So just for everyone, True Elements is a clean label food brand, which is into breakfast and snacks and staples. We provide, or rather True Elements provides food that is without any chemicals, without any preservatives. That's how we started. True Elements eventually came out as a multiple pivot to saying, how do you sustain a scalable brand in the country without without really trying to market and trying to be what you are? That is how True Elements came in. It was obviously not an easy one. It was something that on retrospect I think was a category creation because it was in 2012, 2013 where people are not conscious about health, right? I mean, and being a North Indian, when you go to a store, they'll say, yeah, we'll figure it out when it happens something. Now obviously things are very different. So that was how True Elements started. From a transition, I think it's very different because one of the things that happens when you're a founder is that you are a protagonist. You believe you are the center of attention for everyone. But when you are building a brand, I think, and when an acquisition is happening, you are on the sidelines and you are looking at it in a very dispassionate way that eventually it's going to be handled by somebody else. So that's the difference. But it's good more to do with stuff here than actually skill sets.
Thanks, Puru. So there are 2 Balajis in this session. We have Professor Balaji and Mr. Balaji from Aha Guru. So this question is to Aha Balaji, okay? So, so from IIT Madras, you went on to pursue your PhD in the United States. You came back, you started Aid India, and you helped build a lot of houses for the tribal community. You also educated a lot of people in the tribal community. So that is a form of social entrepreneurship. And now you have started something like Aha Guru, which is completely on the commercial front. So what kind of differences did you see in both these ventures? And what kind of learnings and unlearnings did you have to go through?
Actually, I don't see too much of a difference. Yeah, in one case it's a non-profit, another case it's a private limited company. But in both cases, the core idea, of course, you need the money to keep things running. You need it for the non-profit, you need it in a for-profit. But really the goal is to solve a problem. If that problem bothers you enough and you start. So I never started out thinking I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Neither a social entrepreneur nor a regular entrepreneur in that sense. At every point it was, okay, this is a problem that is really irritating me. I need to solve it. And I think when you start looking at it that way, automatically you try to figure out ways to solve. And often it may turn out that you end up having to build a company or a team to address it. And that's what you do in both cases. In one case, the first one, my focus was on tribal communities who are like homeless. So what do you do there? So how do you build houses for them? Very low cost houses. So it is a problem to be solved. How do you get them to get some land, small plot of land? For 25 years they have been without living in a small hut, some of them living even in garbage dumps. So getting a way to build low cost houses for poor communities is a problem to be solved. The same way, getting children who are not even able to subtract to learn that is a problem to be solved. And in Ahaguru, the focus was, I saw so many children who are not able to learn science or math properly, were getting scared of science and math. Some who started enjoying in the beginning and then finding suddenly that, oh my God, I don't want all this science and math, and getting driven away. So how do you make them enjoy science and math? So that became the problem. So if you're passionate about the problem, entrepreneurship, actually in some sense I differ a little bit from what you said. It's a risky business. You don't want everybody to jump into entrepreneurship. Though I have been an entrepreneur all my life in that sense, when I look back, it is not something everybody should jump into. I would rather say, take a problem that really bothers you and start focusing on how to solve it. You may become an entrepreneur because of that. Then whether you are going to do it in a non-profit way, for-profit way, whether you are going to make money out of it or not, all that is secondary. But the problem is the primary. This is how I see it.
Professor, you have been instrumental in helping many entrepreneurs, and you've also been a part of many incubation cells also in the last decade or so, and now you've got into a teaching mode. So what do you think, will entrepreneurship at some point become a career path like law or medicine or engineering? What are your views on that?
Okay, see again, before answering this question, he said like only 4 or 5 have raised their hands. That's 2% above the global ratio. We always see out of 100, only 2 come forward for entrepreneurship, as he rightly quoted. I believe, I'm happy that we have exceeded the average, global average. Second thing, you asked about, can entrepreneurship become a structured one like medicine or engineering, or for that matters law or science and humanities? The straight answer is, entrepreneurship is also becoming, or I would rather say it has become more structured. But the beauty of entrepreneurship is, it should not become structured. You cannot, you will have a syllabus in medicine or the typical law or typical engineering, where in entrepreneurship, you will have a situation to face. You cannot feed or you cannot make people to learn all those situations. And historically, if you see, there was a period where we thought entrepreneurship is more of arts oriented, and due to some intervention of business schools in the West, they found that entrepreneurship could also be converted into a science. That's where entrepreneurship was being taught in colleges, and I believe that it need not to become fully structured, but it is getting intertwined with the existing curricula. For say, if I want to quote from SRM example, we have introduced minors, micro specializations. We have also introduced entrepreneurship in form of value-added courses, and we are also seriously thinking about embedding entrepreneurship into the regular courses. So our objective is, we want everyone, the goal is at the end of their graduation, a student should have at least a workable product or a workable idea, so that it will help them to excel in their career. Another important point what I wanted to stress here is, learning entrepreneurship is not only to become an entrepreneur. It's a disclaimer. We advise, or I personally advocate people to learn entrepreneurship because it gives you a lot of edge in the chosen career path, wherever or whatever your path is. For say, if you want to become a lawyer, or you want to become a doctor, whatever be your career path, learning entrepreneurship will definitely give you an edge in your chosen career path. That is why I say learn entrepreneurship. I am a classical example. I was, for 2 decades, I was a typical professor teaching computer science and IT, but I got an opportunity to explore this field, and I now see myself as a transformed individual because I started learning entrepreneurship in all possible ways.
Thank you so much, Professor. And see, one of the biggest reason why too many people don't put up their hand is, they have a lot of fear inside them. So, Puru, as an angel investor, what founder mistakes do you see that people repeat again and again? And also, at any point in your tenure as an investor, have you ever backed a startup that has actually failed and not succeeded?
Okay, so I'll is everyone comfortable with finance? I'll probably give a finance answer to it. There are three statements in finance. There is a profit and loss, there is a balance sheet, and there is a cash flow. So when we start as entrepreneurs, most people around us tell us, is your business making money? That's a typical lala banya thinking where, is the business profitable? What happens is people make mistakes. They realize that the theory says they are making money, but actually it is the cash flow which is going out. And then they learn with mistakes saying cash flow is equally important. But I think the crux is what I have probably learned the hard way is you have to look at your business as a balance sheet item. The moment you look at your business as a balance sheet item, you have to create assets. When I meet entrepreneurs and when I explore investing in them, there is sometimes a passion that makes them start. Oh, I believe in this, and hence because my uncle and my aunt and my mother and my father and my cousin believe, so 90% people believe in the idea. That is not. You extrapolate your household into the entire universe, which does not happen. They have to look at it slightly dispassionately and then say, what is this business in for? They should not ask people who are biased about it, who can't give you critical feedback. And if that is the way they are able to look at that business, probably they are able to build up. And the other thing, and the second part that you asked, I think I love entrepreneurs or people in general who are able to laugh at their 1-year-old self, 1 year earlier self. And I think that's the principle that I've seen in a lot of people. If you can laugh, and maybe the previous panelists also mentioned, if you can laugh your 1 year earlier version, somewhere you're moving forward, somewhere you are unlearning and learning, and somewhere you are becoming a better version, and hence there is some growth path. I love to work with those kind of people, broadly.
Thank you. So Mr. Aha Balaji, so what gap did you see in the education system when you were starting Aha Guru? And also how, there are too many online platforms today. So how easy or challenging was it for you to convince parents first? And more than parents, you need to convince the students to come to your platform. So how easy or challenging was it for you?
See, the main thing behind Aha Guru was to make science and math less scary, to make students actually enjoy it. I found a huge skill gap. This is a country which focuses so much on STEM. We focus on STEM so much that we actually ignore the arts, right? Despite that, we do very bad job in science and math teaching. We make them memorize stuff, we make them not really enjoy the subject at all. So the focus of Aha Guru was to see whether we can take up something like JEE preparation, NEET preparation, and make it enjoyable. Make it something that students really start to find that they can fall in love with physics, math, chemistry, and so on. So that was the main purpose of Aha Guru. So we did a lot of research on where students find something difficult, how to simplify. So we are basically heavily focused on researching how students learn and how to make that learning a lot more easier and a lot more fun. So that has been the major focus. Online is, or the technology part of it is a byproduct. It is not, that is not the starting point. The starting point is to make the learning part fun. And through technology, how can we do it is the way. If you look at EdTech itself, I think a large number of EdTechs, unfortunately, the problem is they are putting the technology before the education. It is Ed before the technology. So once you focus on how children learn, how students find something difficult, and try to simplify that, the technology part will start fitting in. You will realize that, okay, you need to modify certain things to make it more easy for students to do. So that is what I realized. And always convincing students is difficult. Convincing parents is difficult. See, there is a dual problem if you take EdTech. There is which is true probably everywhere, but particularly in EdTech because that's the space I am more familiar with. One is to get people to actually subscribe or buy a course. But the bigger problem is not that. The bigger problem is to get them to use the course. Because you buy the course, it's like buying a book. Just because you bought a book doesn't mean that you can keep it under your pillow and learn. You have to read the book at some point, right? And you have to understand it. The same thing is true for online courses. So a lot of our work is also on making sure students use the course. Because the more they use the course, the more they benefit, the more the word of mouth spreads and more students come and join. See, the point is not at this point of sale. The real focus has to be at the point of use. If you can get people to use it, automatically you have success out of it. And once you have success out of it, you get more people to start adopting it. So that is a cycle that we need to focus heavily on.
Okay, sir. Professor, also, is failure something that can be teachable in a classroom, or does a student actually have to go out to the real world, set up a startup and then fail? Where do they learn better, in the classroom or in the real world?
See, both are irreplaceable knowledge. No, you cannot say like teaching a failure in classroom. Practically speaking, we cannot teach failure in the classrooms, but what we can do is, we can prepare them to face the failure in the classroom, or I would say, we can give them a design where they can fail. So that when they go to the real world and really when they face the failure, they will be in a position to at least respond. So to do so, what we do is, we always say this, start early, fail early. That is why we have a pipeline of most of the academic institutions, at least with the perspective of SRM, we don't merely stop ourselves in encouraging or starting a students' entrepreneurial club. We have a pipeline of activities. Idea generation, then they go for idea validation, then they will have a prototype building, then they go for pre-incubation, then incubation. If in this due process, they will have an ample time to test whether this idea will work out or not. If they fail in any of this pipeline, it's well. Even before hitting the market, they get the knowledge of, they will be able to expose to the failure so that they can take a back step, think again, pivot again, they can come forward. So this is with respect to failure. But we can give a design of how to face failures and so on. But we can build capability of resilient to face failures or resilient to failures. And I would say the real experience of going through the failure, probably my co-panelists, both of them would have come across that. So the real experience of going through the failure, nobody can teach, only the experience can teach that. So what we do from academia is, we try to give them a scenario where they can also fail early. That is what lean startup is all about. You start early, fail early, you build small, fail early. Rather than spending too much of money, rather than costing your life, or rather than costing more time, you start early, and if you fail early, it's well and good. That is what we advocate. We also say, we also help them to find out, that is what I said about entrepreneurial education becoming more of science. There has been a lot of surveys and studies which says why globally entrepreneurial ventures fail, startups fail. They have listed some 3-4 points. The first point is, very shockingly, most of the startups fail because they build something which no one wants. Then only the second is bad composition of a team. Then third or fourth only the funding issue comes. We normally think that most of the startup ventures don't see the light in the second year because of funding issues. That's a common analogy what we imagine. But in the reality, statistically they have taken a lot of statistics and they have come up with the outcome that most of the startups fail because they are trying to address a problem which no one wants, which we categorically call it as a SISP, solution in search of a problem.
Thank you, Professor. The next big challenge for an entrepreneur is scaling. So let's talk about scaling of business. We'll start with Puru. So Puru, scaling from 1 to 100, what actually changes? Does it change the business or the entrepreneur himself?
No, so this is the same point that I mentioned last time. I think scaling, the difference is as you scale, the founder has to evolve in scale. Founder has to understand that is this for the next. So that's the piece. I think the only difference is the founder has to be ready to build up, but you also start moving from the protagonist role to an observer role, to a mentor role, to a guide role. I think that's the biggest change that happens as you scale, because you can't do everything yourself. But the problem is, as founders, we also end up being too perfectionists. We always tend to think, no, this guy can't do a job as good as me. 100% they can't. But the idea is to learn to let go and get 5 people to do maybe 70% of what you can do, and then build scale. That's not easy to let go as founders, but that's a piece that you learn as you scale.
Mr. Balaji, your views on scaling up?
The real issue of scaling up is, I think, retaining the quality as you scale. So, of course, you need to build a team. And I think what you said was very valid, that the team is not going to implement it exactly the way you want it. But making sure that you can maintain quality, look at where the places where you are failing, make sure that you are able to correct for it. I think those are very critical when you are looking at scaling. So scaling, not necessarily doing it too fast, but making sure that you scale with quality, I think that is the key. Because if you lose quality, then the whole problem collapses, the whole thing collapses otherwise. After that, bringing it back becomes really difficult.
Professor, what do you teach about scaling up in campuses?
See, it is really tough for us to teach about scaling in the campus, but what we tend to do is, we operate on the fundamental stage, like we always teach them, we see to that their customer discovery process is done in a proper way. Then what happens is the scaling, ultimately when you look at scaling, it all boils down to the fundamental of what is my total market size. You cannot scale beyond the market size. There may be 1 or 2 exceptions. So what we try to do here is, honestly speaking, we cannot teach, because we handle most of the startups will be in their very budding stage or in the aspirational level. So we talk to them and we work more on the idea validation and go to market stage, and we also give them insight of what are the probabilities in which they can scale. If I want to be very honest and accept, then we also give them some kind of already laid down successful frameworks, which gives them an idea about what are the ways in which they can scale and what are the ways in which they can open up new markets. Thanks to strong ecosystem what we follow in India currently, a lot of ecosystem is also giving them a gateway to explore other countries also now. So in those ways, I believe that scaling is inherently taught or inherently made as a part of the package what we offer them in the incubation stage.
So all 3 of you deal with the Gen Z crowd, and we have a lot of Gen Z over here also. So how different is the Gen Z entrepreneur when compared to an entrepreneur 2 decades ago? So maybe Puru, you can talk about it in terms as an investor, how do you look at it? And as an entrepreneur, how do you look at them, the Gen Z crowd?
No, so I quite likely I'll get some flack from the Gen Z for it, but I think as a non-Gen Z, I think one of the things I've seen is that more Gen Z and now Gen Alpha, the me comes before we, and hence I have seen a lot of statements where people have left us in 2-3 months because they don't get good enough me time, which I don't know what exactly it is, but I need my personal space, I need me time, there are a lot of things like that. So the hook for Gen Z entrepreneurs is slightly different from the earlier generations, and probably they are more rational, I would say. Their left brain works much sharper than the right brain probably, but it's a difference. And the piece that I have seen, and because the rational mind works sharply, they are able to address what Professor talked about, the scale, they are able to distance the business a bit more probably, but I am also learning that to see how things are evolving.
Mr. Balaji.
I constantly deal with a lot of Gen Z kids. People, yeah, some slightly older ones also, yeah. People keep blaming them for very low attention and lack of patience. But I think the bigger difference is that the earlier generation had kind of could handle a lot of bullshit, and the Gen Z is not ready to do that, which in many ways is actually good. So if you can give them a reasonably good reason and purpose, if you can give them enough motivation for why they need to do something, I see that they are able to spend enormous amount of time doing it. So I actually don't find that it is a big problem. I feel that it is partly also something that keeps us on our toes to make sure that you are focusing enough on making it meaningful, purposeful. If you do that, then you find that Gen Z is able to put that attention. But the earlier generation, which could have probably dealt with the bullshit and still continued, the Gen Z won't do it. So that is the big difference. So usually people end up saying they don't have the patience for it, but I think it is also something that you can turn back around and say you need to change to make sure that the Gen Z is able to find meaning in what you're saying.
Thank you, sir. Professor, on to you.
Yeah, Gen Z, they have changed two things. How and how fast. These two things have completely changed. Classical example, you don't find patience with them to go through a textbook. They watch YouTubes between 5 to 7 minutes, not a full-fledged YouTube. That too, I see nowadays, they take the link of that YouTube, put it in an OpenAI tool, ask it to summarize, prepare a slide, and when they are going in a bus, they look at it. See, we have to accept this. They are very good at information acquisition. I don't have any secondary thought about it. They are too good at information acquisition, but I still feel, I won't put it in other words, I still feel there is an opportunity in knowledge synthesizing the knowledge. That requires some amount of patience and some amount of time you have to spend with particular topic to grasp into it. So that is what I see the paradigm shift is happening. And I would also say they are very good, their strength is speed. Where they can improve is acquiring more deep knowledge. That is where I feel there are a lot of things to be done. But this is how, we have also moved, I think Gen Z, we are slowly hitting Gen Z millennials also, actually. So these things will keep on changing. I think for the last 60, 70 years, this question would have been a very commonest question. So.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I just have one more question. And before that, let's do a quick rapid fire round with all three of you. And then we'll do the last question. So we'll start with Professor first. So Professor, what is that one tech trend that you've been actively tracking?
See, I track two trends. One is agentic AI and another one is quantum computing.
All right. Mr. Balaji?
I track AI and particularly relevance to education.
And Puru, you?
Very different. I track what Professor just mentioned. How can tech reduce the addiction to devices and mobile? So I'm very keenly looking at those areas because there is a mental health impact and there is a DNA impact.
All right. So the next question, let's start with Puru. So how much time do you actually invest every week in learning?
Every week, around 25
this
to 30 hours.
This is a rapid fire, you have to be quick.
25 to 30 hours.
Okay. So you?
About 10 to 15 hours.
Professor?
I have to spend 25 hours. I do my MBA, so I have to spend. No other opportunity.
So Puru, what is that one thing that you wish that you had learnt quite earlier?
Power of compounding.
Okay. So,
I would say that I wish I had started off focusing on specific goals that can be where you can see the result immediately. So that's something I wish I started long time ago.
Professor?
How to say no.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if there is one skill every entrepreneur must learn today, one important skill, you just have to name one, what would that be?
Curiosity.
Persistence.
Professor?
Okay, I'll go on a tech side. Prompt engineering.
Okay. Puru, book, podcast or mentor, which do you rely on most and why?
Book, because you can have conversations with the book as per your space.
Book.
See, book gives knowledge, podcast gives perspective, but personally I would prefer mentor in entrepreneurial ecosystem because mentor will give you context.
All right, we'll just take this one last, this is not a rapid fire, you need to answer, take 2-3 minutes and answer. So what skills matter most for the next generation entrepreneur? And also, what advice would you like to give students over here? What skills matter for entrepreneurs of the next decade? Professor?
Okay, see, I would say 3 skills. One, no doubt, AI skills. You should learn how can you use the new AI, agentic AI or artificial super intelligence, whatever is going to come, because it can reduce your workload or work time and so on. Second, you should also, if you want to become an entrepreneur, you should have a good grasp of regulatory system, at least in Indian ecosystem. You should have a knowledge on regulatory systems. Third, you should develop human communication skills. When AI is going to take away all our cognitive skills, what left for us is to interact with the fellow human being. Either it could be customer, it could be investor, or it could be anybody else in your ecosystem. So these 3 skills will be very important for any aspiring entrepreneur.
Mr. Balaji.
I would say things are changing so rapidly that, and as an entrepreneur, you will face a whole range of problems you don't even know. So you cannot be prepared for it by saying, I already know these things. So the ability to learn as the problem comes and hits you is probably the one skill that you really need to know. So every time you face something new, the ability to say, okay, first of all, you're afraid. So ability to first overcome your fear and then look around, find out sources from which you can learn, make a few mistakes and then learn it so that then you can actually master it and move on. I think that is one skill that you definitely need to know as an entrepreneur. The second thing is to be persistent, because things are not going to work out the first time. So keep working at it several times, and if you are able to do that, I think those are the 2 main things I would say.
Thank you, sir. Puru, over to you.
Okay, so 2 things. I think curiosity, again at the cost of being repetitive, and the reason is because curiosity is an input. Failure, success, learning, unlearning, these are all outputs, right? But if you're curious, and I've seen it, I've done experiments on myself to evaluate, but experiments work, curiosity works, curiosity moves you forward. And the other skill set I would say is storytelling. I've seen entrepreneurs doing exactly the same thing, like for like, but the better storyteller always is far better and far more successful than anybody. So I think that's one skill set I would really recommend to them.
Thank you so much, Puru. We'll now open the floor for questions. Any questions?
Good evening to all. I'm from a toxicology and the quality control background. So it's nice to see 2 persons from always in arts background, but it's very interesting to go see in the background from the science. Sir, I have a question to Aha Balaji sir. As you said regarding the teaching and things, I do the training for the students, college, and then school students also to have an impact of the non-toxic fruits, because foods, from fruits only we get disease. Because from a toxicology point of view, if I say, there is no awareness, but the same thing when when a person says with a non-technical, people believe it truly. Everything goes with a certificate. It should be an influencer. People go only beyond social influencer rather than the educational background. So how do you rate the students or the persons? Because you say maths and science. I'm till now afraid of maths. Why? Because it's aversion towards CBSE maths, the teacher. Because she comes, she handle one sum, rest of the others you handle by yourself. So the aversion towards maths is being still continuing. So how do you handle this students with the maths problem?
That's an interesting question. So, as you said, basically a lot of people are afraid of math partly because of the teacher. I think that's, the problem is not the subject. The problem is the teacher.
Absolutely, sir.
So, if you can, so why do we fear math? Because probably the teacher is trying to make us fail. Sometimes we feel that the teacher is trying to make us fail. So a teacher who is trying to make you succeed builds your confidence. You will enjoy the subject. It also depends partly on how the teacher is trying to, what the teacher is trying to do. Why do we test? If you are testing to show the student that you are a failure, you have not done well, the student is going to feel that I'm afraid of the test. If the test is being conducted for you to understand what you did not understand so I can explain it again, then you will find that the test has a different purpose. One of the things I have learned as a teacher, the biggest problem is we teach the way we learnt. By the way, it's a very difficult thing for a teacher to teach in a different way. You learned something in class, you understood it in a particular way. You say, I have understood, no, so I'll teach the same way. But you are probably one of those 5-6 students in the class out of 40 who understood it. When your teacher taught, 35 students didn't understand. And if you teach it the same way, what do you think will happen? 35 students won't understand. So, but for a teacher to relearn or unlearn what they have taught and to say, okay, the way I have learnt it and I have understood does not work, I have to do it differently, is a very hard thing because it's a lot of rewiring in your brain as a teacher. So, it is a difficult problem. It is a difficult problem. Often, the math teacher is underconfident to teach it in a new way. The math teacher is underconfident to open it up for the students to ask questions. Okay, a couple of days ago, when I was teaching, I made a mistake and I told students, sorry, I made a mistake. My students were very happy. So if you can acknowledge that you're making a mistake in the class, a lot of students are super happy. But most teachers are very unhappy about it because they're very afraid to make a mistake. So the fact that you must try out new things, you must rewire and do it in a way that you have not learnt, because the way you have learnt is not going to work for everybody. So I think those are the ways to make math easier for children.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, I have a question. Sorry, I'm taking one more question from Puru, sir, because it's my subject. Sir, how is the market feel and other things regarding the true foods? Because from the toxicology perspective, I just want to know it, sir.
No, I think, so it's true elements or true foods is something else? Or you're talking
true
about
elements in your, because you said in true elements, what is the thing you're doing it for food products or something, anything like that?
So you're asking technically what are we doing for quality?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So we have an internal call. I mean, now it's not we, so sorry, but it's Marico.
Yes,
I'll still use we for some time. So we had a quality team and we are very, very specific on quality as a matrix. Our quality head was the most hated person in the team, in the entire company, and that is what probably got us the quality that we maintained. Our rejection rates were the highest in the entire industry. Our vendors didn't like us because we returned a lot of stuff. So that is how we ensured that there are metrics and measures that we stuck to and not compromised. That made us make sure that there is consistency. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Because I just want, because there are true foods, because earlier in one meeting I've just said it's a true foods, but the product what they're saying, no ma'am, we get the foods from outside, it's a native one, we pack it and sell it. So the concern is whether the quality is tested or not, that's the thing.
Quality, even the raw material also, that's why I said, so when our vendors sent us, our rejections are highest. We also made sure that every sack was checked and every product was checked.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, the lady there.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Ritu Gupta Prashant. I'm a business consultant from Franchisee India. And I'm a big fan of you, Puru. And I'm also a customer of True Elements, actually. So that's how I can connect with you. I am a Bania myself. And that's how I connected with you. My advice to you is I'm entering my journey to become an entrepreneur. So it's in our blood, you know that. So that motivated me to just step into it. So can you give me one piece of important advice for my career?
I think honestly the first piece would be that it's you should unlearn that it's not in our blood. Okay, my dad was an army officer. I have traveled around the country. Nobody in my family wanted me to start a business. I kept on telling them that please attach some credibility to the surname. They disregarded it. So that would be my first piece of advice, that unlearn it. If you get overconfident about your blood, you need a blood checkup, sure. So please learn it the hard way.
But I can relate with you. Like you are a Gupta, I am a Gupta, I am a successful person. You are a successful person.
By the way, there are many surnames of Guptas also. I can go on.
Yeah, true. So anyway, regardless of the name, so like what's one piece of important advice you will suggest me to?
I would still stick to what Sangeeta asked. I think the biggest problem I've seen is we tend to stop getting curious. I've seen a lot of founders, they think that they know because they have learned a sort of, they tend to develop a worldview. If you can question each and every worldview that you have, including the blood thing, then you will be able to figure out newer opportunities which probably you don't have. Nobody around you would have also advised. Because we all come from a school of thought, and sometimes that school of thought becomes the impediment to growth. That's the only thing I would advise.
Thank you. Thank you.
Madam, I am here.
Yes, sir.
I am Dr. Bhaskaran, Joint Director from Industries Department, Government of Tamil Nadu. I am now working in Startup Tamil Nadu. So my question is to Mr. Balaji, Dr. Balaji. Sir, what do you expect government to do? We have a lot of policies, MSMEs and all. Wherever I have given a lot of talk in colleges and all, for 100 only 2 or 3 coming students to become an entrepreneur or startup. So what policy we have to change for students to more come? See, in BE I did robo with 4%. We can't start, 4% can't start an industry. All are in a different place, only in Singapore. So I request all students to take only one project. So what is your advice for what government has to do that so many manufacturing activities has to come?
So probably we'll ask all the 3 panelists the questions so that they can give you feedback from their perspective.
Okay. So I think government, I mean, in my perspective, since you are representing Startup TN, we have forums like EDI TN, we have ITNT. Okay, you know all of that. Sir, entrepreneurship will evolve slowly. You can't expect the immediate results because, you know, as a country, only in the last decade we have opened up all these things, and the ecosystem is slowly developing. And I finally believe, and I also appreciate the efforts what the government agencies have put in. I know the typical bureaucratic government agencies, and I have been very closely associated with all these forums. I know how swiftly you people take decision and you reach out to students. My advice is, we are also still working on, we have come up with the policy called National Innovation Startup Policy. You please check how many academic institutions have implemented it. Those are all in papers. But can we really creditize that? That is what academic institutions are also working on. Can we make it as a credit-oriented courses which could be part of entrepreneurship? And we have also gone to a place where we allow, in case if a student starts a startup, we are ready to give them 30 to 40 credits. It's almost 1/3 of their entire course. So we are also really inventing, and I hope government has its own limitation, and policy, whatever policies you can make from yourself, you can also come up with Tamil Nadu Startup Innovation Policy. And second thing, I have been always advocating to Startup TN and ITNT, create a pool of IPR, whatever has been filed in Tamil Nadu. Lot of business opportunities lies in the IPR what we have already done. So rather than reinventing the wheel, we will try to optimize the system which is already existing. This is my sincere observations. I may be right or wrong, but I am damn sure that already we are 3rd in the country, sir. So let's not worry, we are progressing.
Yes, sir.
Honesta sollama. Honesta sollama, sir. Okay. So, see, on one side, the government says that they want to encourage startups. But on the other side, startups that have actually started, they face a lot of difficulty at every point in other departments. I'm not saying the startup department. So you have to imagine that the government is not one department that they have to deal with, right? The startup department will say, I encourage you to do that. But then there'll be a GST department, there'll be an income tax department, there'll be for different things, right? For example, shops and establishment. At every stage, if they have to face difficulty, then you're not making things easy for them to implement. So ultimately, can the government motivate and encourage and fund startups? To a limited extent they can, but not too much. If the ease of doing business improves overall, more people will want to start. Ultimately, why will young people want to start? They see other young people doing well, so they will start. That is actually what is going to make things work. So.
Puru, your... All right, we'll just take one last question before we wind up the session.
So I just recently read that China is actually closing down institutions because they are government funded and they think that AI is actually going to change the job landscape. So they want people to be more entrepreneurial than get certain degrees. So how will India also accommodate it, and what can we learn from China in general? Because in a sense, India started with an advantage. We got a Nobel Prize before them, but after our first Nobel Prize, there wasn't another Indian who did work in India to get a Nobel Prize. And even in terms of large companies, there is not a single company that is, in a sense, has a monopoly in the world, whereas China has multiple companies, multiple sectors where they are a monopoly. So what can we learn from them? Because culturally, we are more or less similar, but there is something different in China that's enabling them to get a much bigger success than us. So what is that?
So who wants to take this question?
Slightly more generic, again, as a student, I can tell you of AI. I think I've studied China from 2005 onwards. That has been my inspiration from almost 20 years. I think the gap, when you say what can we learn, China and to a certain extent now some of the Southeast Asian countries, they look 5 years, 7 years, 10 years ahead. What's going to happen? How do you change things? India struggles with that. A lot of us, because governance, politics, a lot of things make us conscious of short-term decisions, tactical decisions. I think as you correctly said, how will AI impact us 5 years later is far more important as a question versus how will AI help us today. Like, you know, most discussions I know 2 months back or 2 weeks back was about how Oracle, you know, fired so many people, whereas they did not talk about the, you know, and if you follow the stock price of Oracle, you will know the answer exactly, that the moat that Oracle has built is 5 years later, not for today. That's the biggest dichotomy we face as Indians. And if something we have to pick up, we have to look 5 years later, 7 years later, and change things today. For instance, infrastructure, for instance, you know, the investment in data centers and how they will change. Those are things that are still evolving. And I still feel that what China is doing even today in the West Asian conflict is something that we can all learn from, saying, okay, how are they handling it? How can we build up? So you're absolutely right. There is a lot to learn. And hopefully beyond governance, we can also pick things from them.
Thank you so much, Puru. All our panelists are available. They can take questions over tea or something. Thank you so much. Thanks to the audience also. Over to you, Ekta.
How was the session, ladies and gentlemen? Kekla. It was one of the fascinating sessions, isn't it? I think all your questions and doubts have been cleared. If at all you have any other further questions, once we go offline, off stage, then I think you will have enough time to connect with them. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a bigger round of applause for our panelists and for our moderator. This was definitely an insider guide in building for our future. Our panelists have shown us that the secret to start early and fail early is something that we all need to work on, because this is one of the secrets that can definitely define your career or your entrepreneurship in the future. The fascinating thing that I got to learn from this session was about being a keen observer and asking the right questions to the world, because that's your first step to decode things that you want to learn. And also defining career is a continuous process of building, of learning, of relearning, of upskilling, and persistence. Thank you, and definitely a mind shift here. Thank you very much for your time, for your perspectives. Now I'd like to request Mr. Shafiqur Rahman, General Manager of Event, Edition and Activation of the Hindu, to kindly come up to the stage and to present them with a memento. Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude, we hope today's conversation have been helpful for each one of you. A step closer to discovering, to deciding, and to define your career path. On behalf of SRM Institute of Science and Technology and the Hindu, I would like to extend my gratitude to each one of you for being an exceptional and engaging audience. Thank you for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure to be your host. Thank you. Kindly join us for high tea, ladies and gentlemen. It's me, Ekta, signing off.